Welcome from sunny Okazaki in Aichi, Japan, though you can't really tell because this is a very black and windowless room. My name's Glenn, and welcome to the inaugural edition of the YAMASA Institute video log. Now, for those who have been following us on WordPress, and by the way, if you have, thank you, you've probably noticed that we have been sharing certain articles about life in Japan and how to adapt to the lifestyle when you get here. We've decided that is helpful, but we've decided also to add to that by creating I'd hope it's going to be monthly, but I won't guarantee anything, so I will say that it's going to be a semi-regular video log. Now, the purpose of this video log will be twofold. The first purpose of this video log will be to let people know about the courses and events that are being run at the YAMASA Institute. So if you're a past student or a student who intends to enroll here in the future, this will be a pretty good resource if you'd like to see what's going on at your former school, or if you'd like to see what's going on at your future school. So that's the first particular reason why we're doing this video log. The second reason why we're doing this video log is basically to provide a resource for people who are coming to Japan but may not, well, if you're studying at the YAMASA Institute, very good. If you're not studying at the YAMASA Institute, hopefully this video log will also be a bit of a resource to help newcomers to Japan basically adjust, and not just adjust, but thrive while they are here. So those are basically the two particular reasons why we're creating this video log. Before we do launch headfirst into the video log, I'd like to give a bit of a disclaimer. And in particular, I'd like to focus on three things that we really should tell you about the video log. The first thing that we probably need to let you know about the video log is that experiences that I will be conveying on this video log, and opinions that I will be conveying on this video log, are very much subjective on my behalf. So my opinions about life in Japan will be pretty different to, say, a female 20-something Korean university student, or to, say, a 50-year-old African-American male retiree who's living in Japan. So keep in mind that I guess all our opinions, no matter if it's concerning life in Japan or if it's concerning your favourite sports team, we're all basically informed by our own biases and experiences, so don't think that I am the depository of all wisdom on all things Japan. Now, with that being said, I'd like to think that my opinions concerning Japan are basically founded on experience. I have lived here 7 years, so I know a bit. As I said before, I'm not the depository of all knowledge. So I'm hoping that basically the principle of you have to be one to know one is pretty much what informs most of what I say on here. So a lot of the things that I will be talking about are things that I've experienced myself, or they are things that I've witnessed other people going through. Now, the third thing we would like to basically point out about concerning this blog is bear in mind who I am and where this blog's coming from. Essentially, bear in mind that we are a language school, so we are basically, I wouldn't say our views are coloured by our particular biases, but for example, if we're going to be doing a video log on the best language school in Japan, we're probably not going to give you the name of one of our competitors. And also, I guess, if you're after a video log which is about chasing chicks and drinking beer, you probably do need to go to another video log. So we don't really deal with that kind of salacious kind of material. So I haven't disappointed anyone there, but I guess we do need to make that kind of disclaimer before we get started. The topic of today's weblog. Today's web vlog will be basically focused on coming to Japan for the first time for a long-term stay. Now, the most important thing we have to remember if we're going to be staying in Japan for the long term is balance. Now, a lot of people, and it's very, very difficult to really, it could be very difficult. I won't say it is very difficult. It could be very difficult to imagine this if you're overseas at the moment and you've never been to Japan and you're seeing this vlog. But a lot of the people who do come to Japan, at least in my opinion, do tend to straddle the extremes. There are lots of people who do come to Japan and they love the place, and it is a beautiful country, let's not get that wrong. But it is basically a view that is informed by maybe an excessively heavy pair of rose-tinted glasses. Rose-coloured glasses, rose-tinted glasses. A lot of people, when they come here for the first time, think, wow, this place rocks, I'm never going to leave, and, you know, I'm going to live here, you know, till I die, and I'm going to be doing the same teaching job, or, you know, I'm going to be doing something here, and nothing's ever going to change. But there are also a lot of people here who do tend to be the other end of the extreme, that, you know, this country sucks, and, you know, I hate it here, and the first chance I get I'm going home, no one respects me, no one speaks to me in Japanese. The most important thing that we need to remember about living in Japan is balance. Now, that is going to be the first of many points that I'm going to be covering in today's vlog. I would say in total we'll be covering about 4 or 5 different points. So the first thing we really should say as a golden rule is maintain your sense of balance. So don't ever view this country too optimistically, and I don't say that, you know, to be a downer. But remember, it's like any other country in the world. It has its good points and has its bad points. Overall, it's a great country, but also remember it's not exactly Shangri-La. So there's going to be things that are going to get on your nerves, but also keep in mind that there's going to be some things that you're going to love. But on the other side of things, if you are here and you're hating absolutely every moment you are here, it's probably not the place for you, and it probably is time to go home straight away. If the only reason you're here is, you know, for a course or for a job, you're probably here for the wrong reasons. So if you're coming here for the first time, remember the overall rule is balance. Now, on top of that, there are probably a few other things that we need to be a bit careful of when we're thinking of coming to Japan for the first time for a long-term stay. Now, the second thing I would suggest that you do need to be not leery, it sounds like you need to be looking over your shoulder all the time, but to be careful about is to have a good mix of friends. Now, when coming to any country for the first time, it's very important to have a support network. Now, that support network, if you're like me and you're a native English speaker, probably would be best composed of people who come from your linguistic background, or at least speak your language. So that could be people from English-speaking countries, but it could also be people who are Japanese and speak a fairly good level of English and are fairly used to Western cultures. So I would suggest get that support group. However, when you do start to start to get your Japanese knowledge up a little bit, and when I say Japanese knowledge, I mean Japanese language knowledge, but also when you start to get your cultural awareness a little bit higher, I would also suggest that you do start making some Japanese friends and expanding your social circle. Now, the reason for that is because it will give you a more rounded view of Japan. So when the time comes that you're basically confronted with Japanese society, how Japanese society works, it's not going to be too much of a shock. So on that front, basically measure and balance your friendship group. So basically have some friends, have some, friends from your own linguistic background, your own culture, as a support network, because you might want to have someone that you kind of want to let loose with every now and again, but also make sure you have a fair few Japanese friends. Basically, so you're also as well, I guess it will help you improve your Japanese, but it'll also help you adjust to the country. Now, how do we approach this? Now, there are some people, when they do come to Japan for the first time, who basically seal themselves in what they call the gaijin bubble. So they basically only make friends with people from their own linguistic background, and if they do make Japanese friends, they only make friends with people who speak English. Now, I would avoid that, because basically it's a bit culturally limiting. I think you're not really probably getting the most out that you could get out of Japan if you do that. But on the other side of things, there are foreigners as well who tend to take the view that when they get over here, they're not going to speak any of their own language, they're not going to mix with people from their own cultural background. Now, there are traps in this as well. Keep in mind that Japan as a country was closed, and as such, sometimes it can be a little bit confronting for certain Japanese people to be spoken to by a foreigner, and by their nature, Japanese people can be quite shy, and from someone from a Western background who is confronted with this may be perceived as rudeness, mistaken as rudeness, and it can lead to, well, basically bitterness in certain cases and alienation. So on the other side of things, don't come here thinking, you know, I'm not going to speak ever a word of my own language and I'm only hanging out with Japanese people, because that can be just as limiting. Besides, I guess, balancing out your social group and trying to mix with different kinds of people, another thing that we would probably recommend, or I personally would recommend if you do come to Japan, is to play along to get along. Now, there are hundreds of minute examples we could bring up where the West or our own culture differs from Japan, and it's probably a bit of a futile exercise to go through each of them. But it goes without saying really that there will be lots of things that you will see during your time here and you'll think, like, why am I doing this? This makes no sense on any kind of logical level. Well, remember that is also a subjective opinion, so I guess as the dude said in The Big Lebowski, that's just your opinion, man. So that's a paraphrase of what he said. But there will be times where you are confused as to why certain things are happening. Now, what I would say in regards to that is it's very important for you to kind of work out what is really important in your heart of hearts and what you're willing to compromise on. But bear in mind, you will need to compromise. Now, once you've made that distinction, then life will become a lot easier. So there will be certain things like, for example, like coming in and out of a Japanese house and taking your shoes off. I don't think, unless, well, there might be some people, I guess, with bad foot odour or something like that who might feel a little bit uncomfortable about it, but then again, if that's the case, I probably wouldn't come to Japan in the first place, but for most of us, if that's probably not a huge compromise to make. So just think about those kind of things when you're confronted with something that you're not particularly used to in your own country. Play along to get along. And work out what your values are and what's important to you. Another thing that I would recommend for those coming to Japan for the first time who are planning on a long-term stay is to imitate your surroundings. Now, we were speaking about differences and expectations that aren't the same as what we experience in the West. Now, for a lot of people coming for the first time, these will be a complete mystery. What I would suggest to find out what a lot of them are is to watch what's going on around you. Now, a good example of this would be the food on the train deal. Now, for a very long time when I first got here, and this is just me being if everyone's ever seen Crocodile Dundee, Australians are pretty laid-back kind of people. When I was in Japan the first time and I was coming home from work and I was absolutely starving, so what I would do is I used to buy myself a packet of potato chips, crisps, if you're watching this in England, and I would eat them on the train as I would go home. Now, silly me, I did not look at my surroundings and I would never see anyone eating food, and it didn't really concern me, to be honest with you, but I was to find out later on that eating in public is considered a little bit socially awkward. So that's a good example that eventually that I did look at what was going on around me and saw no one was actually doing what I was doing, and then I realised, well, maybe I am committing a bit of a social faux pas. Now, this can apply to a lot of things, but it is a good idea to see what Japanese people are doing around you and try and imitate that. Now, no one expects you to do it perfectly, but the more you do it, the more it will be appreciated as you go down the track. Now, the last thing that we will touch on in today's weblog will be about directness, essentially. Now, my magic rule is, with Japanese people, is take the contents of any statement that you make regarding emotions or opinions and multiply it by 5. That might sound a bit blunt, but it's generally how I perceive things to be. Japanese people, in general, aren't a particularly expressive bunch, and they're not a particularly confrontational or opinionated bunch. So a statement of, like, "I'm very hot today," might come across to a Japanese person as being akin to something like, "I've been sitting in a sauna for 5 hours and now I'm walking out to a 50-degree blast furnace." So when people do tend to make statements here, they do tend to have a lot more weight in regards to what we're used to in the West. Also as well, direct requests aren't particularly made, and direct refusals aren't particularly made too often. A really good rule to keep in mind here as well is that no is not always often said. It's usually said in a very different way. So if someone says no, it usually will come across in the form of sumimasen chotto, which means sorry but, or chotto muzukashii na, in that it might be a bit difficult. If someone says this to you in regards to a request, it's pretty much dollars to donuts that they're saying no to you. But maybe to a Westerner, that would be perceived as, well, it's difficult, but we have wiggle room here. That's definitely not the case. They're trying to say no as well as they possibly can. Now, bear in mind that there will be occasions where people say no. For example, if you decide to go out to Roppongi in Tokyo and you're doing homestay and you call your host mother at 1 o'clock in the morning drunk as a skunk and asking to be picked up, you're probably going to get the fairly same terse answer you'd get in the West, which would be no and a hang up straight away. So, but bear in mind that things are a lot less direct. So, that is the very first YAMASA Institute community weblog. Now, if you've got any comments or opinions that you'd like to share, please feel free to add them to the comments section. Be kind, because this is my first ever attempt at video blogging, and hopefully it doesn't tell too much, but if you do have any comments, we'd be delighted to hear them. If you're interested in the YAMASA Institute, please make sure to check out our website. We're going to be updating our social media channels as much as we possibly can, so feel free to check those out as well. My name's Glenn, and I hope you have a very good rest of the day.